Hi, I'm Ken Martin, and thank you for joining us for our weekly message from DFL headquarters, the Chair's Corner. My guest today is Senator Dick Cohen, who has served the people of St. Paul in the state Senate for over 2 decades. A longtime champion for the arts in Minnesota, in 2009, he was appointed to serve on President Obama's Committee on the Arts and Humanities. In the Senate, he has co-authored a bill that would offer a tax incentive to help grow the film industry here in Minnesota. Senator Cohen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
In a nutshell, what is the film production tax incentive bill, and why should Minnesotans support it?
It's a fairly simple piece of legislation. It provides a tax credit to encourage film production to come into Minnesota, hire Minnesotans, bring money into Minnesota, and also to produce films that will advertise Minnesota to the country.
Well, one argument in support of this bill is that it will help create good-paying jobs in Minnesota. Can you explain how providing a tax incentive to motion picture companies results in job growth here in this state?
A couple things. First of all, if you go back to the 1990s, when Minnesota was, I believe, the 4th or 5th largest film production center in the country after LA, there were approximately 5,000 Minnesotans working basically full-time in the film industry in the state. Half the jobs were union jobs, if not more. And what the tax incentive does is to provide the incentive to the out-of-state production companies to come in. Over the last decade, the domestic film production had tailed off significantly, a combination of budget cuts at the state level and the Canadian exchange rates. When the domestic production work started to come back in, many states had incentive programs. We actually had the first, latter part of the 90s, a small incentive program. But we've not kept pace with some of the other states. And as a consequence, an industry that could flourish in Minnesota, and again, produce several thousand jobs at least, does need that incentive to be competitive.
I was up in Duluth recently speaking with the editor of the Duluth News-Tribune. He had a big poster of that movie Leathernecks on his wall, and I asked him if that movie was filmed in Duluth, and he said no, unfortunately it was filmed in, I think, North Carolina or some other state that offered a greater tax incentive. And we're seeing so many films that are Minnesota-made and feature Minnesota that are being filmed out of this state. Is it your hope that if we provide these tax incentives that more businesses obviously will, or more films obviously will be shot here? I mean, do you have a sense of anything in the pipeline that would point to that?
There's some possibilities. There's a major production that would have some interest if there was some type of incentive, a production that I think would bring something like $15 to $20 million into Minnesota. And you're certainly correct that there have been Minnesota-themed films that have not been produced here. You mentioned Leathernecks, Juno of about 3 years ago, which was written by a Minnesotan, or then a Minnesotan, Diablo Cody, and was a film that was based in Minnesota, was filmed elsewhere. So certainly if you just did some of the Minnesota-themed films, you'd have a significant industry.
Absolutely. It's very encouraging, though, up at the legislature that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are supporting this bill. Why has this bill gained so much bipartisan support, in your opinion?
The message is a fairly simple one, and the film board, both presently and with Lucinda Winter as the executive director, Randy Adamsek, when he ran the film board previously, have put together information that shows on a cost-benefit basis, you can spend X number of dollars and you will realize significantly greater amounts just in terms of tax dollars directly. And you can produce those jobs tomorrow. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you can produce those jobs in a matter of several months. And with the exception of a bonding bill, there's nothing that will actually produce jobs for Minnesotans quite that quickly. And I think in the process, it's convinced some of the Republicans that it works. We were never able to convince Governor Plenty of that, but there are some Republicans who do have that sense presently.
And what do you see as some of the hurdles that still exist and have to be overcome before this motion picture jobs incentive plan can be passed?
The hurdle is a very basic one. It's a hurdle that we face with a lot of things, and that's the question of money. The Minnesota film industry ran into problems. We ran into budget problems at a state level. That obviously has continued. It was not helped, obviously, last year by what the Republicans did in conclusion of the legislative session with basically borrowing money so that we continue to show a deficit for the next biennium. If we can get the budget in a more stable condition, obviously Governor Dayton has killed himself in trying to do so, then we'd have the ability to look at some of the economic development programs that really would make a difference, and make a difference immediately for folks in the state. The film production industry would be one of them.
Well, Senator, you've been a longtime friend to me personally, to the DFL obviously, and to thousands of Minnesotans. Thanks for all of your help on everything you've done over the course of your legislative career. We can't thank you enough, and thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate
Thanks
it.
again.
Yep.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Chair's Corner. I look forward to talking to you again next week as we discuss other important issues of the day. Thank you again.